let's talk about your modules.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do your modules do, and what inspires you to like make a particular module?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my first source of inspiration is necessity, the true mother of invention.
Yeah.
For the most part, I make modules that I want to exist. And in some cases, I make modules that I think would be absurd and hilarious. And I'll get to one of those.
Great.
And, it really just comes from a place of what sort of thing do I want to throw into this whole, bag of tricks that we have here, this modular synthesizer. So I have a variety of modules. I have some very practical ones like Speak to Me, which is a tiny little speaker module so that you can hear what your synthesizer sounds like.
Seems useful.
There are a lot of modules out there that allow, like, they're called output modules that allow you to connect to headphones or connect to, an amplifier or something like that. There are not a lot of modules that have a built-in speaker. So this is great just because, you don't have to have another piece of equipment. You just have that and you can listen to your synthesizer. It also has a headphone amplifier, so you can still use it for that. So, very practical ones like that. And then I have sort of modules that are inspired by things that inspired me. One of my favorite synthesizers of all time is the Juno 106. It is a legendary piece of 80s synthesizer engineering, and it's been on all kinds of songs. One of the most recognizable ones is Sweet Dreams by Eurythmics. Everyone kind of knows that one. That's the Juno 106.
Yep.
Yeah, I love it. So I made a module that is inspired by its oscillators. So the sound source, the voice of the Juno. I recreated. I did a huge, in-depth, like, detailed research into how that works. I published a big article about it, and then I built my own module inspired by that. So it's very similar, but it has its own new quirks and additions and special things that it can do that the Juno couldn't.
Cool.
So yeah, it's inspired by, but it builds on top of what the Juno did.
Nice. And which one is that? What is that?
That one is called Castor and Pollux.
Okay, that is the Castor and Pollux. Cool. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. And the trick is that it has two of the oscillators the Juno has, whereas for the Juno, each voice only had one oscillator. So having two allows you to do all kinds of interesting things when they are, like, slightly out of tune with each other or playing different octaves and things like that. Nice. So all kinds of neat stuff that you can do with two. And then I have the absurd. Yes. I have a module called Big Honking Button that is exactly what it says on the tin. It is a big button that honks at you. And here's a little demonstration. There's the big honking button right there.
Love
and
it.
then this is Speak to Me right next to it right here.
Got it.
Yeah. So if I press a button, it will honk at you.
Nice.
But here's my special secret. It's actually an extremely useful module because it is more than meets the eye. It runs CircuitPython, which means that you can change the way that it works within some, limitations. You can change the sample that's on it, so you can easily load different samples. So if you wanted it to make drum sounds when you press the button, which would be very useful in a modular synthesizer context,
right? Yeah,
can absolutely do that. It includes a bunch of examples and samples that you can play around with, and it's really this performance module, as we call it. It allows you to do some physical input into the modular synthesizer. And in the case of Big Honking Button, that can turn into, a gate, an on or off signal, or because it has this audio output, it can be a sample or a waveform or something like that that can, last as long as you need it to last. And there are interesting modules out there like that simulate string instruments. And one of the ways that they work is they start with what's called an excitation signal. It's like when you pluck a guitar string, that's an excitation, right? And in most cases, this is just white noise, right? You just use a brief burst of white noise to start your string vibrating. But if you have Big Honking Button, you can send all kinds of different stuff into that as the excitation source. And that can lead to some very interesting sounds. So yeah, it's silly on the outside, but deep inside, it is an extremely useful module. And I am honestly, frankly, deeply surprised at how many people have bought a big honking button
Mhm.
and have kept the default program and sample on it. Because having a chaos goose in your synthesizer is great. A lot of people
It
buy
is.
a lot of people get 2 of them, and I'm like, "All right, that's awesome."
Yeah.
Now you can,
Have
use one
dueling
for
geese.
yeah, you have dueling geese, or you can use one for practical purposes
Yeah.
and use the other for honking.